On the eve of the spring festival, in a bid to save money for a house, I listed myself on a popular shopping app as a co-rental girlfriend, eagerly awaiting my first paycheck. Good news, I got it, and the pay was substantial. Bad news, my first client was my arch nemesis.
We agreed, we only talk money, not feelings.
Ethan and I stared at each other. After graduating from college, I thought we would never meet again. As old rivals, meeting again for such a strange reason, either he was crazy or I was.
Long time no see, Miss Emily.
I looked up to see his meaningful smile and gritted my teeth.
I didn't expect Mr. Ethan to be so outstanding, yet still need to rent a girlfriend for the new year.
He raised an eyebrow, looking incredibly smug.
Now I am your customer.
I used to be infatuated with that voice and his looks, but now I just wanted to punch him.
I can add another 2,000.
Hearing this, I immediately sat up straight and extended my hand.
Pleasure doing business, Mr. Customer. You're actually not that bad.
According to the contract, I had to pretend to be his girlfriend for half a month, only responsible for meeting his family. Any overtime required mutual agreement. The best part was, it paid 1,000 a day. Plus, I could take paid leave. Not earning this money would be a waste. Thinking of this, I felt my future was bright and full of promise. Cough, 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 I was so excited I choked.
How have you been these 7 years?
As you can see, very well.
Yes, Ethan and I had known each other for 7 years, 4 of which we were rivals, and the other 3. He was the unattainable crush of my life. Since high school, he was the school heartthrob, the dream guy of countless girls, including me. But I was ordinary, invisible, and insecure, only able to secretly admire him. Until that day, I walked into the classroom and saw 9 big words written on the blackboard, "Ethan, you are my moon." It was a love letter I wrote to Ethan, somehow made public. I saw the mockery and ridicule on my classmates' faces. My breathing became rapid, my mind blank. Tears blurred my vision, but I forced myself to my seat, trembling as I cleaned up my messy desk. Bang! A loud noise, followed by the sound of someone quickly erasing the blackboard, then everything went quiet. A pair of hands gently patted my head.
Sorry.
I didn't dare look up, but the tears flowed even more. He stayed with me for a long, long time. That day after school, my dream came true. In the slanting sunlight, our gray shadows walked side by side on the concrete ground. We talked about many things, from class assignments to life goals. Ethan was my first friend. Later, we often chatted online. He was my outlet for negative emotions and my source of confidence and motivation. The mockery and ridicule continued, but it felt like a ray of light had illuminated my dark life. From then on, I gave it my all and finally got into a university with him. I thought our relationship was different from ordinary friends. Getting into a university, I was one step closer to him. I even thought, when I became good enough, I would confess my love, be brave for once, and become his official girlfriend. But I failed. My bravery was laughable. I once firmly believed he was my moon. After dinner, Ethan insisted on driving me home. Under the temptation of money, I compromised once again. Sitting in Ethan's car, I stared blankly at his car pendant, a cute little pig, completely at odds with his proud demeanor.
Do you like pork?
He replied helplessly.
I think pigs are cute.
Internally, I scoffed, sly fox.
Why aren't you sitting in the front seat?
He stared at me through the rearview mirror.
I'm allergic to the front seat.
I sat upright, looking as if I was telling the truth.
More money.
Hearing those two words, I immediately unbuckled my seatbelt, opened the door, got out, got back in, and closed the door, all in one fluid motion, giving myself full marks for my reaction speed. At that moment, Ethan suddenly leaned over. I saw his dark, slightly curly hair, and a faint tea fragrance lingered at the tip of my nose. I froze, my whole body stiffened, only my heart was racing.
My defenses were down. It was my first close encounter with an eligible young man. How could I not be nervous?
Click! My fantasy was interrupted. Ethan looked at me, his eyes smiling.
Buckle up, my girlfriend.
I was stunned. Being Ethan's official girlfriend was my biggest wish when I was 18. Now at 22, it came true, but without the imagined joy and happiness. Ethan and I had drifted apart after becoming adults. After entering a university, we still kept in close contact. He was as popular as ever, and I loved him as I did in high school, ignoring others' opinions. On Ethan's 20th birthday, I wore a new dress and personally wrapped a bouquet of roses at a florist, ready to confess. It was rush hour, and the traffic was terrible, so I had to walk to his birthday party. By the time I arrived, I was an hour late. The new dress was soaked with sweat, the heels of my shoes were worn out, but the bouquet of red roses was still fresh and beautiful. But there was an even more stunning red rose present, Sophia, the famous beauty of a university. She was holding a wine glass, talking to Ethan. They were very close, their hair intertwined, stinging my eyes. Ethan squinted at Sophia as she spoke, his eyes full of tenderness. I suddenly felt very pathetic, but my feet seemed rooted to the ground. I stared at them drinking, laughing, and finally disappearing from my sight together. That night, I wandered the streets barefoot. When I got home, it was already early morning. I opened WeChat and saw Sophia had updated her moments with a photo of her and Ethan, captioned,
Peace and joy.
After thinking for a moment, I opened the chat window, typed happy birthday, and sent it. Ethan replied instantly.
Why is this birthday wish late this time?
I didn't reply and chose to block and delete him.
Outstanding people are always drawn to each other.
At that time, I was just an ordinary girl, lacking confidence. The only thing I was proud of was getting into a university. In front of Sophia, I felt the huge gap for the first time, shattering my last bit of courage. As expected, Ethan didn't come looking for me either. After that, he disappeared from my sight for a while. We tacitly didn't contact each other, but I didn't feel regret. After that incident, I refocused on myself. Over-focusing on others makes you lose yourself. In the first semester of sophomore year, during a competition, Ethan and I stood on the award stage together.
You are really excellent.
I smiled.
Of course.
Later, I participated in many competitions and activities, always competing with Ethan, fighting tooth and nail. Some people said,
You just want to get Ethan's attention.
What kind of grudge do you two have?
You should team up with Ethan and dominate the competitions.
I just smiled and didn't say much. We both tacitly sealed that memory away, turning from old friends to rivals. Actually, my initial intention for participating in competitions was not out of love turning into hate, to get back at Ethan, but to hone and train myself, to become my own beam of light. But it always happened that the competitions I joined, he joined too. In our senior year, we both competed for a guaranteed graduate school spot, neither willing to back down. It was the first time I lost to him. After graduation, we completely lost contact. Looking out the window at 25, the world was still bustling and lively, as if only Ethan and I had changed, but also hadn't. I glanced sideways at Ethan. He didn't notice my gaze, focused on driving. Anyway, he was just my customer. From then on, I gave it my all and finally got into a university with him.
I thought our relationship was different from ordinary friends. Getting into a university, I was one step closer to him.
I even thought, when I became good enough, I would confess my love, be brave for once, and become his official girlfriend.
But I failed. My bravery was laughable.
I once firmly believed he was my moon.
I went to work, despite being unwell. Today's task was to meet relatives.
As Ethan's future daughter-in-law, Emily was strongly requested by his uncle and aunt to make an appearance. She adjusted her smile, ready to charm all the relatives and friends with her personality. But when she opened the door, her smile froze. It was Sophia, Ethan's rumored girlfriend.
You must be my sister-in-law. You're so beautiful. My brother doesn't deserve you.
Cousin?
At this moment, Ethan walked over with a smile, gently tucking a stray lock of hair behind Emily's ear, looking every bit the model husband.
Emily, this is my cousin.
Emily's gaze shifted between the two of them. This twist fried her brain, and she quickly excused herself to wash the dishes. Everyone was in the living room, snacking on sunflower seeds, not paying attention to her.
I hid in the kitchen, quickly took out my phone, and messaged my best friend. Sophia and Ethan are relatives.
What?
Typing lacks emotion, listen to my voice message.
Emily rambled on, her voice rising and falling. Just as she finished, she turned around and bumped into a pair of deep eyes. He looked at her, amusement in his eyes.
What are you doing?
How could I let you do housework?
So, you and Sophia are relatives.
Yes, our families didn't interact much before, but she and I got into the same university, and
what?
I introduced her to her girlfriend.
Girlfriend?
Yes, they're very happy now.
In just a few hours, Emily had received a lot of information, and she hadn't had time to process it. Ethan leaned closer, one arm resting on the table beside her waist, the other gently pressing on her head.
What are you thinking about?
Emily's face heated up, and she quickly fled the scene. At the dinner table, Sophia's father raised his glass to Ethan.
Thanks to Ethan. Now I have 2 daughters who are filial to me.
Following his gaze, Emily saw 2 girls smiling with their eyes, happy and content. Late at night, after a busy day, Emily broke her 3-year streak of not posting on social media and posted a status. No picture, just a line of text.
May all love be fulfilled.
Ethan liked it immediately. Emily impulsively opened their chat window.
We hadn't communicated much, just a few words.
She stared at those words until she saw the status bar above the chat box change to, "The other party is typing." Emily immediately got nervous, her palms sweating. After a long time, the status bar changed back to Ethan. She didn't receive a new message. Maybe he had something to say to her too. The contract stipulated that these days were rest days. I seized the opportunity to sleep from morning till night. When I opened my eyes, it was already late, and I suddenly felt like I was the only person left in the world. Just as I was about to open Nettie's Cloud to play a song and start my emo mode, my phone buzzed.
Sophia invites you to a voice call.
After spending the past few days together, I had grown quite fond of this enthusiastic and straightforward girl, so I answered without hesitation.
Sis! Come quickly, my brother is throwing a huge tantrum. Help!
Why is he throwing a tantrum?
My cousin brought a kid over, and the kid broke something. My brother got really angry and even pushed the kid down.
Her background noise was chaotic, with a child crying and women arguing. Ridiculous, today wasn't supposed to be my workday. If I had known, I would have added a clause to the contract: overtime requires double pay. When I arrived at the scene, a woman was yelling at the door of Ethan's house.
It's just a few broken decorations. Pushing my son, you couldn't afford to compensate even if you sold your whole family.
Wow, what a performance, worth the trip.
That's my cousin. Her son broke a pearl necklace, a laptop, and...
How much is your son worth? How much do you want us to compensate you?
The woman actually thought for a moment and said,
Considering we're relatives, 5,000.
I'll give you 10,000.
She looked shocked. Before she could react, I kicked the brat standing next to her to the ground. As she was about to rush over to punish me, I threw a credit card on the ground and lifted my chin.
There's 10,000 here, enough to knock your son over twice, no need for change.
She was furious, turning to Ethan's parents to badmouth me, but Ethan's mother innocently said,
What's wrong? Emily gave you the money.
Yeah, you said 5,000, my sister-in-law gave you 10,000.
The cousin pointed at us, speechless, and finally left with her son. Luckily, she didn't take the credit card. But even if she did, it didn't matter, there was only $10 on it anyway. Ethan's parents and Sophia were all praising me, and I proudly shrugged. Whatever, I can go crazy. At that moment, I suddenly noticed the closed door and remembered that Ethan hadn't appeared at all. I stood in front of Ethan's door, adjusting my breathing. I had never seen Ethan angry before. There must be something important on that laptop. I turned my head to seek outside help, only to find that everyone had already disappeared. Where was the unconditional support they promised? Exhaling, I knocked on the door, ready to face it alone.
Click.
The door opened a crack. Before seeing Ethan, I had thought of many comforting words and imagined countless scenarios, but I never expected. He was staring blankly at a pile of broken glass, with a few dried petals scattered around. I awkwardly coughed a few times, walked up, and patted his shoulder.
Don't be sad, I've already taught that brat a lesson for you.
I know.
Is this a bouquet of dried flowers?
Roses.
You must have received many flowers. Just make another identical bouquet next time.
You gave me this one.
Well, what? I gave it to you? I gave you roses?
He no longer kept his head down, our eyes met, and there was an indescribable emotion in his eyes.
On my birthday, you brought a bouquet of roses. Later, you threw it in the trash. I picked it up.
My nose tingled, remembering that fresh, vibrant bouquet of red roses from 7 years ago. So that bouquet didn't rot. At that moment, Ethan gently took my hand, shaking it slightly as if afraid I would blame him.
Will there be more in the future?
I remained silent, unsure of how to respond. Should I answer as the girl from 7 years ago, or as his current contract girlfriend? Seeing my lack of response, he asked again.
Can you give me another bouquet?
His tone carried a hint of pleading, his eyes misty and a bit pitiful. In the end, I nodded and said,
Okay.
From then on, I gave it my all and finally got into a university with him.
I thought our relationship was different from ordinary friends. Getting into a university, I was one step closer to him. I even thought, when I became good enough, I would confess my love, be brave for once, and become his official girlfriend. But I failed. My bravery was laughable. I once firmly believed he was my moon.
From then on, I gave it my all and finally got into a university with him.
I thought our relationship was different from ordinary friends. Getting into a university, I was one step closer to him. I even thought, when I became good enough, I would confess my love, be brave for once, and become his official girlfriend.
But I failed. My bravery was laughable.
I once firmly believed he was my moon.
From then on, I gave it my all and finally got into a university with him. I thought our relationship was different from ordinary friends. Getting into a university, I was one step closer to him.
I even thought, when I became good enough, I would confess my love, be brave for once, and become his official girlfriend.
But I failed. My bravery was laughable. I once firmly believed he was my moon. From then on, I gave it my all and finally got into a university with him.
I thought our relationship was different from ordinary friends. Getting into a university, I was one step closer to him.
I even thought, when I became good enough, I would confess my love, be brave for once, and become his official girlfriend.
But I failed. My bravery was laughable.
I once firmly believed he was my moon. From then on, I gave it my all and finally got into a university with him. I thought our relationship was different from ordinary friends. Getting into a university, I was one step closer to him. I even thought, when I became good enough, I would confess my love, be brave for once, and become his official girlfriend. But I failed. My bravery was laughable. I once firmly believed he was my moon.